My ex-boss tried to sabotage my new job, but I had a secret weapon if life has ever tested your kindness. This story is for you. Then follow up with subscribe, hit the bell icon, and let's dive in. It was supposed to be the beginning of something new, a fresh start. After 18 years of dedication, hard work, and sleepless nights, I finally made the decision to leave my old job. My role as the head of the engineering team had brought me respect and a decent salary, but it never brought peace. My ex-boss, Daniel Price, had a way of making everything feel like it was never enough. I knew I could do more. I could bring my skills and knowledge to a new company, start from scratch, and finally be valued for my ideas instead of being stuck under the thumb of someone who never appreciated me. The new company was everything I had hoped for. The team was welcoming, and the projects were exciting. I had a chance to shape something real. It felt like a weight had been lifted off my shoulders. I had signed the offer letter, packed up my office, and was about to start my first day. I didn't regret leaving my old position. Not for a second. But little did I know, my old boss, Daniel, wasn't going to let me go so easily. The first couple of weeks went smoothly at the new job. I quickly settled into my role, meeting with the team, learning their processes, and brainstorming new ideas. The respect I had longed for was finally here. I felt appreciated, valued, like I was making a real impact. It was a world away from my old job, where I was often overlooked and constantly undermined by Daniel. I thought I could finally breathe, but it didn't take long for things to take a turn. One morning, I received a cryptic email from an unknown address. It was a forwarded message from one of the HR directors at my previous company. The message was brief but direct. "Be careful with what you're doing. We know what you're up to." Confused and slightly unsettled, I brushed it off as a prank, maybe even a mistake. But then another email came in. This time it was more detailed. It was a list of files, old projects, and even some of my personal notes from my time at the previous company. The sender had gone so far as to attach screenshots from internal meetings I'd been a part of, conversations Daniel and I had once shared. It wasn't long before I connected the dots. Daniel was behind this. He couldn't stand the fact that I had moved on. He was trying to keep me in check, attempting to drag me back into the web of his control. I couldn't let this get to me. I had worked too hard to let his petty games interfere with my future. But that wasn't all. The sabotage was just beginning. As the weeks passed, Daniel's attempts to sabotage my new role escalated. I had expected some tension, perhaps a few comments from colleagues who still communicated with him, but this was more insidious. It wasn't just a matter of whispers in the hallways or offhand remarks. Daniel was actively plotting to undermine me, and his tactics were more calculated than I ever imagined. It started with small, seemingly innocent things. My new boss, Claire, began to receive anonymous emails criticizing my work ethic. The emails claimed that I was too slow, that I didn't have the right leadership qualities for my role, and that my decision-making was questionable. They weren't signed, but the tone was unmistakable. I recognized Daniel's influence in every word. At first, Claire didn't seem to pay much attention, but over time, I noticed her growing distance. I couldn't help but wonder if those emails were slowly beginning to plant seeds of doubt in her mind. It wasn't long before I received another blow. During a team meeting, an external contractor, someone I had worked with briefly in the past, brought up a project I had led at my old company. "Daniel Price always spoke highly of you," they said. "But, he said you were difficult to work with at times." I froze. The contractor had no reason to bring up my past unless someone had whispered in their ear. I could feel Daniel's shadow lurking over me. He wasn't just trying to make me doubt myself. He was trying to poison my reputation, trying to make sure I couldn't find success in this new chapter. But I wasn't going to give in. I had worked too hard for too long to let one man tear it all down. I started noticing patterns. These little attacks weren't random. They were part of a bigger scheme. There was something else happening behind the scenes that I wasn't seeing, something deeper. Daniel had a way of planting subtle doubts, creating situations where I would have to defend myself, and I could feel my credibility slipping. I knew something had to be done. And that's when I decided to play my trump card, my secret weapon. This wasn't just about surviving anymore. It was about showing Daniel and anyone else who thought they could control my future that I was more than capable of standing on my own 2F. I had a network, an invaluable resource that I had built over the years. It wasn't just a bunch of people I had worked with. It was a network of allies, friends, and colleagues who believed in me. People who knew the real story behind my departure from my previous job, who knew how much I had sacrificed, and who knew the truth about the work I had done. I wasn't just going to rely on my skills. I was going to leverage the support of my network. I made some phone calls, sent a few discreet messages, and quietly began gathering information. I needed to expose Daniel's efforts before they could take hold. But I had to be careful. I couldn't let him know that I was onto him. If he realized what I was doing, it could make things worse. So I played it cool, let the pressure build, and waited for the right moment. What I didn't expect was just how quickly that moment would come. The tension was unbearable. Every day felt like a battle, and it was clear Daniel's influence was trying to take its toll. But I was patient. I knew my secret weapon was stronger than anything he could throw at me. I had the truth, I had my network, and most importantly, I had something Daniel never expected. I had control over my own narrative. The moment I had been waiting for came when Claire, my new boss, called me into her office. Her face was stern, and I could tell something was on her mind. My heart raced. Was this it? Had the anonymous emails, the comments from contractors, and Daniel's whispers finally turned her against me? "I've been getting some strange feedback about you," she said, leaning forward. "It's been a bit of a mixed bag, and I wanted to hear your side." I was prepared. I had already anticipated this meeting. "I'm aware of the feedback," I said calmly. "And I can tell you, it's all based on misinformation. I don't know who's been spreading these rumors, but I can assure you that I'm committed to this role, to this company, and to making sure we succeed." Claire raised an eyebrow. "And what about your previous job? There have been whispers that your departure wasn't entirely smooth. Some are wondering if there's more to it." I took a deep breath. This was my chance to set the record straight. "I'll be honest," I began, keeping my voice steady. "I left my previous role because I wanted to grow, and I wanted to find a place where I could truly make an impact. But there's more to the story than what some people may think. I was constantly held back by someone who didn't value my work. The decision to leave wasn't easy, but it was the right one for me." Claire sat back in her chair, processing my words. I could see she was weighing my sincerity. It was then that I made my move. I don't want to get into the specifics of my previous job, but if you're interested, I have people who can vouch for my character, my work ethic, and my integrity. I wasn't just talking about colleagues from the past. I was talking about my network. The people who had worked with me closely and knew exactly how I had been treated. They were ready to speak out, to confirm everything I had said. Within hours, I had arranged a few calls with trusted allies who had no problem confirming my side of the story. One of them was a former senior manager who had witnessed firsthand the toxic work environment created by Daniel. Another was an HR rep who knew all the details of how I had been treated unfairly during my final months. As soon as the calls happened, the picture began to change. The anonymous emails and rumors lost their power. Claire was no longer receiving negative feedback. Instead, she was hearing the truth. It was a beautiful moment. Daniel had underestimated how much influence my network had, and it became painfully clear to him that he was losing control. But this wasn't the end. Not yet. I still had one final step to take. One that would not only prove Daniel's efforts futile, but also show him that I was in charge now. I had to deal with him directly. And so, I made the call. The call with Daniel wasn't something I had anticipated to be easy. After all, he wasn't someone who took losing control well. But I had reached a point where I couldn't let his manipulations go unchecked. He needed to see that his efforts had failed, and that I had outsmarted him at his own game. I picked up the phone, my hand steady despite the tension that pulsed through me. When Daniel's name flashed on the screen, I took a deep breath and answered. There was no small talk, no pleasantries. "Daniel," I said, my voice firm. We need, I said, my voice firm. We need to talk. He seemed surprised, but there was no mistaking the arrogance in his voice when he replied, "What is it now? I figured you'd either quit or fade into the background by now." I couldn't let that slide. "I haven't quit, and I'm not going anywhere. But I do need to make something clear. The games you've been playing, the attempts to undermine my career, they've stopped. I'm not letting you continue with this." For a moment, there was silence on the other end of the line. I could almost hear him processing what I'd said. I knew this wasn't going to be easy for him. He wasn't used to someone standing up to him, let alone calling him out directly. "I don't know what you think you're doing, but if you think you can talk to me like that, you're sorely mistaken," Daniel finally said, his tone icy. "You think you've won? You're nothing without me. I made you who you are." I didn't flinch. "You didn't make me. You tried to break me, but you only helped me realize how much I'm capable of. What you don't understand is that I don't need your approval anymore. I don't need anyone to tell me what I'm worth." Daniel scoffed, clearly not expecting such a bold response. "This is your last chance. Don't think you'll get far without my support." But I knew deep down that his support wasn't what I needed. He had become a weight around my neck, trying to pull me back into a place I had already left behind. And now that I was free, I wasn't going to let him drag me down anymore. "You've been trying to ruin my reputation, to sabotage my career," I continued. "But you didn't account for one thing. I have something you can't control, my own success, and that's something you'll never take away from me." There was another long pause, and when he spoke again, his voice was quieter, less confident. "You think you've won? You don't even know what you're up against." I smiled, knowing the tables had completely turned. "I've already won, Daniel. You just don't realize it yet." The call ended abruptly, and I felt a sense of satisfaction wash over me. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about reclaiming my power, my confidence, and my future. I had proved that I could rise above the toxic tactics he had tried to use against me, and in the end, it was his own actions that had led to his downfall. Weeks later, Daniel's influence dwindled. The colleagues he had tried to manipulate began to see him for who he truly was. His attempts to discredit me had only highlighted his own weaknesses, and the company began to look elsewhere for leadership. As for me, my career was stronger than ever. I had earned the respect of my peers and my new boss. I was no longer defined by the shadow of someone else's manipulation. The lessons I had learned during this battle were invaluable. I had learned to trust in myself, to rely on my own abilities, and to never let anyone else's negativity shape my worth. But more than anything, I had learned that no one could ever sabotage what I had built, not unless I let them, and that's something I would never allow. If this story touched your heart, don't forget to like, comment, and share. And if you've ever faced betrayal or unexpected twists, let us know in the comments how you overcame it. Stay tuned for more emotional journeys like this one.